Tim, I'm Jocelyn. I'm with the CIO here at Valcom. It's a pleasure to meet you. Mike's talked a lot about you. So,
Yeah, likewise. I think we have the same haircut. Good to see.
yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
We've had two conversations. I'm really impressed, Tim, with what you've built. And just by way of introduction to the podcast, before we get into fun conversation, I'm Mike Linton, CEO of Valcom. Josh and I are brothers, in case you didn't get that, or in case our last names don't work because we don't look alike. So people are like, "Are you really brothers?" And then Tim, if you could introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your background. I think that would be awesome.
Yeah, Tim MalcomVetter, co-founder and CEO of Wirespeed. I've been doing cybersecurity for 25 years, small companies, big companies, practitioner most of my time. The first company I've ever started, uh, built and ran the red team at Walmart. So my job was for 5 years to hack into all of Walmart's businesses on 5 continents. We used to say we did it 24/7, 300. So 65 days of the year from Thanksgiving to January, about the fifth year. When Walmart's revenue was $1 billion a day, we were told go sit in the corner and don't mess anything up, right? Because the revenue is too important. So we said that's great. Everyone else was really stressed out during that time frame, and they're like, the holiday's a big deal, and we were literally took vacations and prepped and we're ready to come back and built new tools for the next year. We're all excited. On January 5th, we go meet with the blue team and say, "Hey, we're ready to go red team," and they're like, "Please don't come hard," right? Like they're all just like worn out. Did that and then went to I left there and wanted to get back on the defense side. I've always alternated between offense and defense for most of my career and got over to a company called Cybersecurity, which is actually at the time it's called Fish Tech. It's Gary Fish's nth company, whatever number that is. Gary is actually one of our seed investors, which was a really cool thing, a small world, because I was a FishNet customer back in like 2003. So it's been fun and very validating to have Gary in our round. But anyway, went over to Fish Tech and was the CTO for the managed security services business and watched that thing grow like crazy. Got there in April of 21, had 12 customers. By the end of the year, we had 50 managed security customers, and I went from 18 engineers to 78. I hired 60 in 8 months. My team and I did, and my beard went white, and it was great fun. It felt like years, and then we got merged up with Herjavec Group, and we grew and went from 100 combined customers to 300 combined customers in 1 year. And we had a little bit of a snafu in the middle of the year, and out of that, some of the inspiration for what Wirespeed is came out of that. We started doing some automation, and then one thing led to another, and now we've got. I left there and said, "Hey, there's a better mousetrap," and in the process of that, left and went to a little company called NetSpy that Valcom does a lot of business with. I went over there as head of strategy for just about a year, just to kind of burn off non-compete, stay out of the business a little bit. Met up with my co-founder there, Jake Reynolds, who was their head of product engineering and built their attack surface management platform from 0 to 2 million in revenue. So he was there from the beginning, and he did a lot of work on their PTAS, the Resolve platform as well. And he's an expert pen tester, and it was just a really good alignment. So I said, "Hey man, this is what I want to go build." And we said, "All right, let's go step out." Did that about 14 months ago, and took the risk of not having a W-2 paycheck for the first time in my life. And it was exciting, and it was scary when you first take that step, and then it was exciting every single second since. We bootstrapped all the way up to revenue, got our first customers. We kicked a really large unnamed MDR customer provider out, cut their bill in half, made the customer really, really excited and happy, and just started adding. And we've added a handful of MSSPs. We got one that's bringing. We have 30 accounts that are coming over to us by the end of the month. We're onboarding them right now, as an example.
Congrats.
Yeah, it's real fun. It's validating. And what's cool is we're actually changing the way the MSSP works too. So their people are now literally doing different work. They're no longer doing level one triage. They're now doing higher order thinking, stuff that humans like, that are less burnout oriented. So it's a good win for them, good win for us. And yeah, we're just doing our thing, knocking down bad guys and growing.
So in all your experience, so you've had, I mean, awesome run and ride and many different jobs on the offense, on the defense. A lot of our audience are IT leaders, IT managers. What, in your experience, if you could come up with a couple lessons or experiences that you've had that taught you a big lesson that you would want to pass on to maybe those things that you pass on to your teams or things that you would want to pass on to many IT leaders, whether it be in the cybersecurity space or anything. So an experience and then what you learned from that.
Thanks, Mike. That's a fun question. I would say the first thought is every single role I've ever had, I thought, oh man, this completely builds on everything I've ever done. This is amazing. and this is it. This is the culmination. This is it. And then I get to the next one. I'm like, oh man, this builds even on that, and it just goes all over. So there's been a little kid like excitement every time I do the next thing. I think as long as I keep having that, I'll keep working. It won't matter, what the financial situation is. I'll be like, this is fun. I really like it. Um, the other thing that I like to tell people all the time is security is not as hard as everyone thinks it is. We have vendors that absolutely want to tell you that it's ever evolving and never changing landscape, and you've got all these things, and these trackers are doing this, this, and this. Dude, I can point you to 1960s academic papers that tell you everything you need to know about cybersecurity if you just would apply them to today's technology. The concepts and principles are absolutely known. They're solid. They're not changing. And that is the philosophical underpinning for how Wirespeed works. We take these really basic, simple concepts. We've got it modeled in a data taxonomy. We take all that utter complexity and garbage out and simplify it, is what we do. So that is usually not a message you hear from vendors. They want you to be scared. They want you to think it's too complicated. You can't do it on your own. And like, maybe you can't completely do it on your own, but it's not as complicated as people make it out to be.
Yeah, that is the first time that I think I've heard that, especially from a security kind of expert. Maybe expound on that a little bit more. Like, what are some of these basics that it almost sounds like people are forgetting or just bypassing and getting to the complexity? Like, what is that they need to focus on?
Well, so I'll tell you this. So when I was doing red team work and we would do these debriefs, and I felt like one of the best parts of my job was telling stories. It's just we would a lot of times I'd be given a target, and I could spend with my team an hour or two looking at this target, and I'd probably be able to tell you the story of how we were going to get in. I just could figure it out. We just knew. The rest of it was like the engineering exercise of actually doing it to prove we really did it. And then the rest of it was the art of the storytell to the internal team in order to get them motivated, let's just say motivated, to go fix the things that most likely they have people inside their company have been telling them that they need to go fix, but they just couldn't articulate why this was important. Almost never did we come into an environment where they were like, "Oh, I had no idea this was possible," or nobody was tracking this as a posture issue or a vulnerability issue or a concern. Like there's almost always a concern. So when I got asked these questions and people would say, "Oh, but you guys are just like secret little ninja hacker people," and I was like, "Well, actually, it's not that complicated." We started thinking about it and boiling it down, and we've got tools like MITRE ATT&CK now, which when I started wasn't there. Obviously, that's a newer tool. That came when I started doing red teaming. That was released, and my team actually and I contributed to some of it too. We like, okay, this is a great tool to describe kind of the taxonomy, the encyclopedia of the different stages of it. I think honestly, no offense, MITRE guys, I think you overdid it. I think it's too complicated. And I actually wrote a blog many years ago called the 5 ways you can breach a company. There's only 5, and we've got a regurgitated, refreshed version of it sitting on the Wirespeed blog. But it's actually not as complicated as people make it out to be. But it's really straightforward, and it's all intuitive things that anybody that's been paying attention knows. There's something vulnerable facing the internet, right? Facing the public, actually. I'll say public because that includes like you got bad Wi-Fi at your physical location. It's public facing. Like for example, when I was at Walmart, one of the things that they used to brag about was we have a supercenter or a neighborhood market or a Sam's Club within 10 miles of 90% of the US population. And I used to remind them that meant you've got a Wi-Fi interface within 10 miles of 90% of the US population. It's public facing. It's almost internet scale, right? So things like that. So think of public facing vulnerabilities, that's there. We all know about that. Everyone's like, patch your vulnerabilities, do whatever. Great. We'll get that out of the way. The second one is abusing internet facing authentication. So this is also, we know this because it's like, well, don't you use MFA and use multi-factor. Well, guess what? We have at Wirespeed every single week multiple adversary in the middle account takeovers where people are deployed, have MFA deployed, and are still getting phished because of the nature of trust and the nature of how one-time passcodes and push authentication is working. And one day maybe we'll all get FIDO2 passkeys and that'll solve that. But in the meantime, like it's still a thing. But so you can think of there's a lot of things that could go into this. It's the phishing for credentials, it's the brute forcing for credentials, the password sprays, maybe abusing handoff mechanisms, but basically abusing identity, right? So got 2 mechanisms right there. That's the majority of it. Phishing for malware execution is the third one. If you stop and think about it, like I want to get code running on an endpoint, we see this less now, which is fun. Why is that? Because EDR is more widely deployed. And bad guys realize like they're not done doing it. Obviously, we still have ransomware cases every single day, but they realize that for a customer with, because EDR is more prevalent, it's more widely deployed, it's raised the bar across the board. As a malware developer, I've written a lot of malware. It's hard to live on modern EDR because it's going to see what you're doing, right? And so what do we see? We see people now moving to common tools, like I'm going to use your remote management tool on your behalf, or I'm going to deploy a second copy of Screen Connect. It's my instance, not your instance. And your EDR just goes, hey, Screen Connect, it's an RMM tool. I'm good. Let it go. So there's things there. So malware execution, or just execution, malicious execution in general is the third one. Physical access. We don't like to think about this all that often, but that is a real thing. And that could be as simple and dumb as the person who picks up the USB drive and puts it in. We used to think that was just a stupid thing that pen testers did that real bad guys didn't do. But Fin7 many years ago, not many, but just a few years ago, said, hey, we'll pick that old school thing back up and started mailing people thumb drives that were weaponized. So that's a real thing. And then the last one is supply chain attacks. And we all think of it as like the XE utils, or think of it as like the Solar Winds one. But in my definition, I include human supply chain. So if you have a third party IT or business process outsourced provider and they're compromised, they're in your supply chain. They're inside, right? So those 5 ways, if you just understand those five, there's only five. That's how companies get breached. And I've challenged people to come up with a sixth way. No one's convinced me there's a sixth way.
So how do you take that and then boil it down to that's when you realize that there's a simpler way? That's why you built Wirespeed. Tell us that story of how that pivots into what you're doing
Well,
now.
two things. We know attackers are moving fast. Our hypothesis was they're going to move faster. And I should tell you, I'm gonna tell you a flip side story. So every internal red team at any really large company, every time this ever like a company can actually afford to go hire people to do this, and there's very few that can afford to do it, you have this process that happens. Red team absolutely kicks blue team's butt for a little bit in the beginning, and they're like, we're on top of the world. Da, 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 da. Blue team's like, this lower level. They're like, oh man, after 2 or 3 of these, like never again. They figure out how to catch them, then it switches places, right? Where now blue's on top, and the red team's like, hey, but the internet and social media tell me that I should always be able to win, and what the heck? And their egos are crushed, and then they have this moment, and then it goes back and forth and back and forth. Eventually, it becomes a tight little helix where it's really, 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 really tight. I left Walmart when I got that to a really tight helix, right? Like it was to the point where now it's somebody else can run this, right? When we were upside down, when we got contained for the first time ever, and this was years ago. So I think everyone knows the Mandiant M trends, and that's when they used to say 400 days of dwell time, stupid stuff like this. And what does dwell time mean? It means you find out that the bad guys are there. It doesn't mean you contain them. How do you find out they're there? Well, in that number factored in is like things like ransomware notes, because they told you they're there, right? So as we see dwell time coming down, a lot of it's just because they're telling you, the bad guys telling you they're there. So we're thinking, okay, this is starting to happen, but it's still really it's days to weeks, of dwell time. We started getting contained in hours, and this was blowing our minds. This was crushing our egos as the people, the internet tells us red teamer guys should always just win and whatever. And so we started thinking, okay, how do I gotta get guys, we spent all this time with crazy tradecraft. We had hundreds of DNS domains that we kept on ice that we curated, like fine wine. This is a domain that matches exactly the category, what I need. And in any given exercise, we'd have 20 domains, right? I'd have fish domains. I'd have pre-fish domains. I'd have callback C2 domains. I'd have stage domains. I'd have all these different things. We'd have failovers. So all this stuff all set up, and we are doing all this crazy custom payloads. Everything was unique. We knew it passed EDR, all of this stuff. And we were still getting contained in 2 to 4 hours. And we're like, what the heck? And so I sat down with my team, put them in a room with a whiteboard, and said, all right, we can't, when we spend all this effort fighting to get access to an endpoint, we cannot spend hours triaging what we have on this endpoint going slow. We have to go fast. To which one of my very seasoned red team guys, who's still over there, and I've worked with him for years and love him, said, Tim, I can't do that. And I was like, what do you mean? He goes, this is the actual quote, and I've got a blog about this if you want to see it. I have to feel the shell. And I was like, feel the shell? What are you making? Like, this doesn't make any sense. So I started like, okay, walk through. And he's like, well, I don't know what I'm going to do. I have to know what kind of shell it is. Like, okay, is it a Linux box or Windows box? I don't know. You tell me. So we started going through this and said, oh, it's a Linux box. I want to check this stuff. I want to check this. And what if a Windows box? Check this stuff. And I started drawing it out. And I said, John, look at this. You think in an algorithm. It's right here. So we took that algorithm and we wrote it in our malware to automate this process, right? And we started when we landed, we could do all the triage and all the collection and everything we need to do as fast as we possibly can in seconds to minutes on endpoints, and we proved that that would work. So at that moment when I was convinced that in the future, maybe not 2018 when this was going on, the future is going to be the person with the better algorithm is going to win. And fast forward the story, I get on the blue team side. We're trying to scale up a SOC and we're knocking people over because of the amount of alerts and all this stuff. And then we're like not able to keep up. And I sit down with some of our nice blue team SOC analysts and senior team leads and stuff like that. So, all right, talk to me about what you do to work these cases. And I had someone say, I don't know, I kind of have to see and feel the case. And I was like, whoa, I have lived this before on the red team side. Let's have a whole conversation about this. And I now I had the hack of I'm going to get you to realize you think in an algorithm. And as soon as we got there, it was like, okay, we've got to just build the algorithm on the blue team side. And then just further illustrated, we know that there's going to be bad guys that are going to write algorithms and there's going to be good guys that write algorithms. So this is all pre-AI. And now we get people worried about AI automating it. I'm not completely worried about it. I think it's just another tool. But all that's to say, we knew this was our thesis from day one. The inevitability is we have to go fast. So if I've got that as my thesis, then guess what? I have a live case. We're not even a little over 1 year old. And I've got a case where we saw an account takeover, right? So a user got tricked to give their credentials to an adversary in the middle portal. Bad guy steals a session. Within 47 seconds is coming from a totally different IP address on the other side of the country. So the adversary portal's in California. The login's now coming from New York. And in 47 seconds, it's not just that they logged in, but they've actually discovered other users that person emails regularly inside the company. So Alice emails Bob, right? Alice is taken over. I see Bob as a primary email recipient, and now Bob is being phished from Alice across the country, 47 seconds. That is what we're seeing right now. That is like state of the art, the fastest I've clocked thus far. That's going to be normal. That is going to be the typical, and it's going to get faster and faster and faster. So if this is the case, and given the amount of things we have on the internet, the number of devices, especially with cloud and cloud compute, and the amount of instrumentation, so the amount of logs, the amount of data is just skyrocketing. It's impossible for a human to look at all of this. And so we've got this problem. This was the thesis behind what Wirespeed is. And then at the same time, AI, large language models, are not the answer. And there's a really particular reason for it. They're all non-deterministic. There are 40 something AI SOC vendors that Wirespeed tracks that we just kind of watch and keep our tabs on. From everything we can tell, none of them have truly replaced a human being. We have. And it's because they're non-deterministic, which means every time I send an alert to this thing, it can any different direction, right? The results that come out of it are not consistent. So if you want to do quality control against it, so I get a verdict from this thing and I say, well, this is wrong. And I say, I want to go fix it. Well, what do? You go fix your prompt. You don't have control over what it does. I can send the same prompt through an LLM 10 times to get 10 different answers. So it's really hard to ratchet that down and control the quality on it. So we evaluated this tech just like every other tech, anything else that's out there, and said, no, 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 no. It has to be conditional logic that we control, very deterministic. We use AI in specific places where we understand it. And we have a model behind that where we talk about type 1 and type 2 decisions. We should have a lot more type 2 decisions happen autonomously by people lower in the org, right? Type 2 meaning I can erase it. I can redo it. It's not in permanent marker. Type 1 meaning it's in Sharpie, right? It's done. It's permanent. Type 1 decisions should be really thoughtful and careful. Type 2, make them fast. Go, erase. It's very similar to the Zuckerberg move fast and break stuff kind of philosophy, right? AI, type 2 all day long, right? That's where co-pilots work because it's going to do anything. If it's wrong, the human's looking at it anyway. Humans making the type 1 decision, the final answer. Then they're looking and going, this is garbage, do it again. You're right, reprompt, do something else. So we are trying to be 100% type 1 decisions as much as possible. So we have deterministic code to do this. And this is the reason why this is our approach and this is our whole thing. So bad guys move faster. Security is actually not as complicated as it needs to be. How we do this, by the way, our big dirty trick, or not dirty trick, but secret trick is we work the maze backwards. So when you're a kid and you go to Pizza Hut in the 1980s for your book it, if you guys remember, and you sit down there and you're waiting for the pizza, so you get your little kids thing and you get the maze. I would always start at the end and work backwards. Why? Because there's only one way to go that way. If you go the other way, there's they intentionally put like 4, 5, 6 traps where you get into a dead end. So we go backwards. We say, okay, what are the things that a SOC analyst is actually going to do with the case? When they get an alert, what are the things? We track there's about 20 to 30 things, and it's depends on, like, some of them are slicing hair or whether they're really separate things or not. But about 20-ish things that you're going to do. And so we just take those and we work back. Like, what does it take to get these into these buckets? And that's how we do it. That's our thing. That's Wirespeed's.
As an executive, what or you're talking to an executive, what would you tell them Wirespeed does, why it's different, why they should talk to you?
Usually just ask this question. Do you have an MDR? Yeah. Do you love your MDR? They never say yes. I, I rarely getting the best answer I've gotten recently was they have their what do you call it? Their highlight moments. So you call it they have their moments basically. And I was like, oh, so like the right alert got to the right human at the right time when he's got the right amount of energy and attention and all that just lined up. The stars were perfect. And he's like, yeah. And I was like, okay, what about the other 99% of the time? He's like, yeah. So to contrast that, so one of our first customers, I texted them right after we closed our seed round and said, "Hey, press release, got to close our seed round," and he wrote back, "Oh, that's awesome. We love Wirespeed." And I was hit because I know how hard it is. Because I sat there and I was the churn goalie for a long time at the other place where I was going to get beat up over things like, and obviously in a QBR, and a customer would ask dumb questions like, Tim, it feels like we pay you to investigate alerts, only for you to send them back to my team to investigate. And I'd have to sit here and go, oh crap, I've got one answer, the legalistic answer. Well, sir, you've got this RACI document during onboarding where it says you're responsible and accountable for these things, da, 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 da. And they go, yeah, I get all that. It doesn't feel right, right? It feels like you're, or to quote one of my friends, pager duty is a service. You're just passing this through and like amplifying the noise, and that's all you're doing. Uh, so we sat and thought about that and like, okay, is this a problem unique to us? No. Talk to my friends at other MSSPs, other MDRs. They all have this problem. Then I went back and I reflected on my time red teaming at Walmart, one of the largest SOCs in the world. Keep in mind, for some perspective, 1 in 3 credit card transactions happen at a Walmart in the United States. They never had a credit card breach. Stop and think about that. Everybody had a credit card breach. They never did. Just to give you some shout out, they have a really, really rock solid team, and I really respect them a lot. What do they do? Fundamentals. And they're not, and low ego. That's what they do. Fundamentals and low ego. So when you get a detection and I see, oh, Mike's involved in this thing, I'm going to go ping you. And Mike, I need to talk to you about this. I can't get a hold of you. And let's just say Josh is your boss. Josh, I can't get a hold of Mike. I need to get a hold and if I can't get a hold of both of you, guess what I do? Lock Mike out. Guess what we do? That exact same thing. We automate it and we call it chat ops. We use Slack, Teams, email, and SMS, and we will go ping you. We say, hey, we get this thing. It's sketchy. It's gray. And this is where this gets down to like why it feels like an alert factory for these other companies is because the reality is I've got all these alerts coming in this giant funnel. At the bottom of it, I've got this pinwheel, this really slow pinwheel of humans that are going to pull these alerts one time and throw it in the right bucket. Yes, no, over the fence to you, right? And why do they do that? Well, they see an alert. It involved Jane Doe. They know the thing was suspicious. They don't know who Jane Doe is. They don't know how to get a hold of Jane Doe because they literally don't have the contact information. It's just a ticket in their screen. And if they did get a hold of Jane Doe, they wouldn't know they're talking to the real Jane Doe. So we solved that by going out and saying, okay, I can tell that we need this context. Maybe it's a weird, suspicious invocation in AWS. Maybe it's a login event. We actually will go and persona match. So if it's a technical thing and the user doesn't have a technical job title, we won't. We'll just go straight to escalation or containment because it's highly unlikely that they're doing that thing. But if they're technical, we'll say, you know what? I'm going to go ping them. We broadcast out over those mechanisms, the tools that you already use in your company. We get a hold of that person and say, hey, really simply, one sentence, was this you? And you say, yes, this was me. No, it wasn't, or I don't know. And if you say, yes, this was me, we go, cool. Guess what? We're really paranoid cybersecurity people. You might be a bad guy. So we're going to go look at the directory that we sync every day from your company. And I'm going to notice, oh, your phone number hasn't changed in quite some time. I trust it. Okay. Because the likelihood of a bad guy, we've all heard of SIM swap and SIM jacking and stuff like that. But the likelihood of a bad guy opportunistically tricking you to log into their adversary in the middle portal and take over your account and also SIM jack you is basically zero. Most criminal attackers are not. That's like upper echelon of criminal attackers, most likely in nation state and espionage, and that's not the threat model we're worried about in this scenario. So, okay, cool, got it. Send you a one-time passcode, just like you've gotten everywhere else. You give me that number back. I've validated your identity out of band. I know I'm talking to the real Jane Doe, and you've confirmed this is you. We close the case. got examples of this where we do this and the IT team doesn't even have to hear it. So the value prop to you is you get monitoring, you don't get the alerts. We actually do the work and you'll get a summary of the stuff that we actually do back. And every single step that we take, every decision is all documented, is all transparent. We err on the side of not hiding any intellectual property. We've actually made that the conscious decision, Jake and I did, that screw the intellectual property thing. We're maybe the anti-vendor vendor in this way. It needs to be transparent. You need to know why we did it. And for you to know why we did it, you need to understand why we took this detection and put it in the category we did. And then you need to understand what we did with it in that side of that category. And you need to have the ability to override some of our policy decisions at those steps without having to understand the code or understand like the process or like it's not SOAR, it's not playbooks, it's not any of that. It's just literally, oh yeah, privacy VPNs. Yeah, I don't want to allow those at all. Just go ahead and contain them. Right? Cool. You can override that. So it's all there. We err on having a very simple UI and then on top of that, because the biggest cost with MDR is the giant army of humans. We don't have that giant army of humans. We've taken our humans out of the process and they supervise it using a really cool process called AQL. It's another 3-hour conversation about why that's cool, but it's something that's used in manufacturing. It's an ISO standard. It's never been used in cyber at this scale, and it's literally part of our platform. It's what we do. So that's how we make sure it's on there. So you think of it as like, instead of that funnel, I've got a straight pipe and all these alerts going straight down in their buckets. And I've got humans that are spot checking and pulling out of the buckets and going, this input went to this output. Is that correct? Yes or no? And if it's wrong, if it's a critical defect, meaning it's a safety issue for the customer, we re-adjudicate by hand everything that was in that batch. So sampling leads to full batch. And that's how we keep it on the rails. By the way, you can't do that with LLMs, AI, because it'll randomly put it in different places. And I can maybe go and say, yeah, it's all bad, but I can't fix it because I can't guarantee that every time it goes in, right? We can look at it and go, this went to the wrong bucket. Why? Oh, we didn't parse this field right. Or we didn't have an edge case correct. Or we didn't, there's some little thing. We take that particular example, it becomes a unit test. We have a line of code that will do whatever the correction is that was missing. And that unit test then becomes part of a regression test. And every single time we do a blue-green deployment live, it's going to rerun. And we know it's always going to work going forward. Just good old classic, hard, disciplined software engineering. That is what scales. That's what's going to win.
That's fascinating. I think it's been so interesting as you've talked. One of the things we like to try to introduce to the people who are listening is kind of how they can, how an IT director can go have this conversation with their CIO or the CEO, the executives, and say, hey, here are the reasons that we need to make this change. I think MDR has been one of those things that it's a checkbox. Everybody has to have it. I literally answered a questionnaire yesterday that said, do we have a SOC, that's monitoring 24/7? Yes. What it's doing, exactly how it's working, I'm not sure that I certainly don't know exactly what they're doing, right? And I think that what you've shared, I think gives an IT director it's a different take on just checking the box. And I think that's a really cool thing for our customers to hear and to understand. Is there anything else that you would encourage IT directors as they're, say, preparing to have these conversations with their executive teams, things that they should know? I mean, cybersecurity, a lot of times it's we'll buy when there's an issue, or they get budget when they get a breach, right?
Yeah.
And is there anything that you would tell them that they should know or could know that would help them bridge that gap and say, hey, we need budget before we have this? Is any secrets that you could share?
Well, one thing that we do that's different, I don't know of any other MDR provider that does what I'm about to tell you. It's very helpful. When we do an onboarding, whether it's like a proof of concept, we bring in your sources. We actually go back in time 90 days, collect all those prior alerts and all that signal, and we triage it. And then you'll have cases there as if we were to have worked them 90 days ago, 89 days ago, 88 days ago, whatever, and you can see it. We do that for a couple reasons. One, when you're trying to bake off and compare an MDR provider, like in the old school way, like, and by old school, I mean like last week, there are still MDR companies that say, if I'm going to onboard you, I'm going to charge you $20,000 for onboarding. I'm going to do this professional services thing. I'm going to go drop these things in. I've got a guy. He's great. He's going to come in. He's going to do all this stuff. He's going to clean up your SIM because your SIM obviously should need work and maintenance and whatever. So we're going to go do all this stuff. And then they go, wait, you want to do a POC bake off? I have to do that for free? I can't charge you 20 grand. So like some of them are already out. Like they don't even want to do that. Then the others will go, I'll do it, but I'll just do a couple things. I'll do your EDR and maybe your identity, and maybe that's it or whatever. That's fine. Yeah, let's just do that. And like, okay, kinda. But then how that works is it's from that point forward once they turn you on. So you have to have something bad happen simultaneously to having your current setup, whatever it's your internal SOC or no SOC or whatever MDR you're using today, and whatever you're evaluating or the 2 or 3 you're evaluating. And hopefully that doesn't happen. And it's also like hard to get that to line up because they'll go, I'll give it to you for 2 weeks. And like nothing bad happens. You get a boring 2 weeks. Guess what? Who's better? I don't know. Flip a coin. Who had the better steak dinner? I don't know. Like that's literally what it ends up being a lot of times. So we say, let's go back in time 90 days. Why? Because you know what happened last 90. It's usually a big enough swath of time that we're going to find things. Also, what's fun is you had somebody in your environment most likely. We have a customer that we just displaced another really big, not the one that Mike, I'm thinking of, another big named, whom I really respect, MDR provider. Why do we kick them out? Because that MDR provider missed an account takeover for one of their people. And how did the company find out about it? Business impact. So wire fraud, right? They had financial fraud as a result of it. And that happened. And then guess what? 30 days later, same user, same situation, another event. So they're like twice in a month, big name MDR provider that's, one of the King of the Hill brands. What would you do? And so they had that conversation. Meanwhile, the CIO of the parent company happened to have a little bit of a sneak peek for Wirespeed and said, "Hey, Tim, could you have helped with this?" And I said, "Yeah, how long ago was it?" Well, the last one was a week ago. And so the one was like, so it's like 5 weeks ago. I was like, "Yeah, cool. Yeah, we go back in time 90 days." So we went back in time 90 days, pulled all the detections, triaged it, and go, there's your 2 account takeovers. We popped them. They're right there. We got full analysis of them. By the way, here's 4 more that you don't know about. And they're like, 4 more? It's like, yes, we see this all of the time. We've got some blogs on our success stories tag if you go out on our website where they talk about this, but we've got users, we onboard somebody and then this user is logging in from I think Moscow, then like Luxembourg, and then Buenos Aires, and then Argentina in like 18 hours. And no, he does not fly the Learjet. He's a welder actually, for a water tank company. Not exactly somebody who's going to be going in 18 hours doing water tank welding globally. So why was this happening? So we looked at this account. Obviously, the password hadn't been. It was one of those things where the password had an exemption on the password retention or rotate policy and hadn't changed since like 2017. So to put that in perspective, that's like around the time when Azure came out. So this has been sitting in Azure Identity, basically never having rotated the creds. It was 1FA'd for whatever reason. They like gave him an exclusion. And when we dug into dark web analysis on it, we found that this guy's password actually was in Telegram. And we could tell you that it was a cracked version of Call of Duty 4 that was actually weaponized with an info stealer that actually stole his creds. So his company creds got stolen off a home device for years, and it's been sitting in Telegram, and people have been pulling this down. And threat actors have basically been logging in and account checking it, but it didn't go anywhere. So as I sat here and pondered this, and I started seeing this theme at time after time when we onboard a customer, it hit me. It's real obvious. If I was a red team guy and I got access to an account, I'd triage it. Do I have the ability to do wire fraud? Okay, cool. Let's chase it for business email compromise and funds transfer fraud. If not that, is it somebody who's technical that has a means towards King of the Hill? Like, can I get King of the Hill in IT and take over the account, therefore ransomware? This guy was neither. He was not technical, nor was he a financial person. So neither outcome was viable for him. So it's like imagine you live in a 2-story house and every single night somebody comes in and jiggles your lock, opens it up, walks in the house and goes, "Is there anything in here I can sell, on the black market?" No, slams the door. And night after night after night, this is going on. If you found out about it, you'd be pretty terrified, right? Because maybe someday somebody's got a different angle, right? And that's exactly what's happening. So this customer who has this business impact, and now they get these 4 others, and I had to walk through, like, let's look at their access. By the way, we pull them in. We do persona mapping. We can see they're not financial users. We can see they're not technical users. So that's why. That's why they've been taken over, and there's no path. I mean, in theory, a bad guy could take that account, use it to social engineer and phish another person in order to get to a contact that does have the access they want. But that's work. And the dirty secret is most of these bad guys are lazy and they want the quick wins. So they're going to go in real quick, move on, real quick, move in, go on. Right. So if you're an IT director and you're looking at this going, what can I do? And I want to know, do you have a litmus test that your MDR is doing a good job? You can spin up a trial for us for free. We'll go back in time. We'll let you run for 2 weeks or so after that. But the past 90 is where you're going to get the real value, and you're going to know, hey, did my provider do a good enough job or not? If they didn't, well, guess what? Now we can start talking about path forward, and you have other options. And you can start looking at also and going, dang, Wirespeed saw all these things. The analysis was literally 1 second. I can see every single step. I don't get that from these guys. My third party team writes false positive, and that's the only text I get back on the ticket, right? I don't get any analysis. It's just that, or maybe some regurgitated stuff that came from like Microsoft or something. It's not actually anything intelligent and value add. So I get all this detailed step and process on this, and it's still only in 1 second. And they're finding things that my other provider didn't find. And it's half the price. What the heck? It's a no-brainer. It's real obvious. We know we're sitting on a complete change. We think that MDR is going to completely shift, and it should because frankly, it's too expensive, and more people need to like we have there's so many underserved companies that can't really afford to do it or can't do it well, and that's part of our mission is to try to protect more companies.
Do you see you changing all the others so they can keep up over time? Are they going to adopt the strategies you just shared on this podcast?
I'm not going to name names, but there's an AI SOC vendor, probably one of the leading ones, that within a quarter of us announcing chat ops, added chat ops. Within a quarter of us talking about AQL, the acceptable quality limit stuff, talked about AQL. Won't publish screenshots of how they use it. Just say, yeah, we use it, prove it. It's literally part of our platform. They won't talk about how they do chat ops. Oh, we can do it blog post. Okay, fine. So we've already seen copycats in this little bit of time. That's great. That means we're onto something. The big vendors, I think the huge ones are giant ocean liners and they're way out at sea. And even changing 5 degrees, I mean, it's such a course correction. It's going to take them a long time. They're going to have to change their model. Like one of the other big key differences between us and the other MDRs, and it comes from the origins of the SIM days, right? You throw all your data in the SIM, and then we say we have really cool, elite, amazing detection rules that are gonna tease the signal out. And this whole idea of like we're gonna throw stuff in, we're gonna lift up signal out of it. I've seen companies get ransomware more than once because of that scenario. Because what happened is CrowdStrike, Sentinel-1, whatever, changed something in the maybe it's the title or another field, one of the category fields or some other metadata about the alert, and then that rule was static. It was old, it was not fresh, and didn't see that change, and therefore didn't pop that signal. And so it all just went in and filtered and just died in the SIM. And 3 days later, what's happened? Encryption everywhere. Companies now locked out. Now having dealing with outages, dealing with payments, dealing with regulatory, dealing with all of this. And so we take the approach of every single thing is high, we knock down. We don't lift up. So every signal that comes in, our job is to weed out the things that are garbage. And that's how we know we're going to err, maybe on the side of we'll over escalate to you, but we still do a good job. We've got an MSSP that's on platform, been with us for a year. In the last 90 days, I could pull up right now and show you if it didn't reveal the name. 99% alert reduction for all their alerts with the last 90 days. 99%. So we have some customers that come in and they're like 89 to 90. We just need to tune them, right? But we have customers that we can get all the way up that high. We have tenants as small as one user, and we have another really large conglomerate of retail brands that have I think it's 204,000 endpoints that we're doing a POV with right now, and that particular customer is running at 96% alert reduction. So stop and think about that, right? It's massive in order to build, it's just a totally different way of thinking.
Are you doing a layered approach where you're laying on top of the EDR, the
Yes.
others? Are you replacing them? And then
We're
one of my questions is you focused on identity being the one of the five that you've
yeah,
pretty much solved better and faster than everyone else. Are the other tools built in Wirespeed and I think that
great
was one of
question.
the questions I had when I originally talked to you is if identity is just the main point, are you doing all the other things? Is it equal? Is
Doing it
it
all.
you're doing it all? So
Doing it
explain
all.
that to me.
We
Give me the comfort because when I first talked to you, I'm like, if they do this so well, it's game changing. Are they doing all the other things and how? And does that matter? I mean, there are four others
yes.
attack surfaces, so I'm just
Yes.
curious on that.
It all matters. So what's funny is we hate acronyms. If you go to our website and you scroll to the very bottom of the footer, you'll see this thing that says acronym soup, and then that's the only place where you'll see like MDR, XDR, SIM, SOX, or whatever. We put it all the way down there because we hate them. When I say MDR, the reason why we say MDR is because it's the closest thing that has the outcomes of what we're trying to do. We kind of feel like we're maybe a new category, but startups fail when they try to educate a market on a brand new category. So we're trying to just blend it in with terms that most people understand. So I had a customer even this morning tell me, "Oh, Well, MDR is just management on the EDR, and you're doing more than that. That's MXDR. Like, dude, I don't want to have acronym soup throwdown debates at all. Like our goal is you have bad things that happen. We have signals that come out. You have controls. You have investments. We want to consume all of those things. We want to work every one of these signals to ground. Every one of them. It doesn't matter if it's coming from a network device, if it's something coming from an identity source, if it's coming from an endpoint or cloud. Don't care. We're going to take it. We have a methodology and taxonomy that addresses all of that, and we have steps for all of that, right? Um, if we don't have an integration today that is in our list that you have, we welcome it. We're new. We know that the name of the game is building integrations. We'll be building integrations for the next 2-3 years, right? So if you've got a new favorite product that does network detection response and you want to bring it in, I had a customer yesterday ask about that. It's like, heck yeah, we have that. Actually, it's thought out. It's in our taxonomy. We just don't have a customer with that yet. Let's bring it in. We do the category mapping. We babysit it for a week or two. It's good to go. So yes, you should have all of those things. We layer on our own detections only where we think gaps are. And we think the biggest gap right now is identity. And the reason why we think that is because most customers, especially if you're an IT director, and meaning there's not a security person inside your company, I guarantee you don't have a third-party identity threat detection response, ITDR, that's another acronym, put a dollar in jar, product, right? And you're probably just relying on whatever's coming out of Microsoft or Google. If it's Google, guess what? It's going to come to you 8 hours later. Good luck with that. Probably on your tier. If it's Microsoft, it'll come to you somewhere between 8 minutes if you're lucky and 12 hours later. We've seen a lot of really late detections. And so we say, thank you for that. We're also going to take your raw logs, your sign-in events, and we're going to run our own detections on top of it. In addition, I've got an example on our blog where Microsoft popped an alert on a login that came from an Akamai IP address, so a CDN, web host. And that's obviously weird. People shouldn't be doing it. By the way, it's an MFA login, so it's totally legit, is what their syntax says. If you look it down in the details, it says risk state remediated MFA. You're like, oh, cool. But it's MFA because it's a proxy and it stole your credentials in the process. And like, you don't understand how this works. So that was the first detection they fired. We fired 5 more right after it from a privacy VPN. So we see the privacy VPN, same user. Guess what? I can see the session ID is the same. I can see the user agent, the device changed, which means the victim on Windows 10 got tricked into logging into, I'll go read this invoice or whatever the lure was. I got to log into MFA, hit the push, and they do this. They get fatigued, so they just do it. They don't realize that it's Office 365 misspelled or whatever the URL is. They don't end up paying attention to it, and they shouldn't have to, honestly. So they get tricked on that. The cred's now taken. The cred is now then picked up interactively minutes later by an actual hands-on keyboard bad guy. When he takes that session and he puts it into his browser, guess what? His browser's Chrome on Mac OS. Session IDs don't hop devices, right? So that's there. Then we see the business email compromise rules. So he went, read a bunch of email in that customer's inbox and decided, okay, here's a victim that I want to go manipulate. Any email coming from this domain, I want to go ahead and mark as read and bury it in the conversation history folder. Why? Because no one looks there. It's that in the RSS feeds folder in Outlook, which people RSS feed, what year is it? But it's still there, and people like to drop their stuff in there, right? Only thing is, some people are starting to look for people writing rules to RSS feeds, so they started being a little more clever and put it other places. So they go, okay, cool, we're gonna throw it in there. Awesome, got it hidden. And then for good measure, this bad guy went and created one more rule that says if it's from anybody and it includes the words hacked, phishing, and I think maybe one other, like, go ahead and mark that as hidden as well. I'll hide it and bury it away. So we see all this, and it's very obvious that this is, this is a bad guy. So we're plugging all of these gaps because Microsoft's not doing it. And when they do it, by the way, they do it best when you go all the way up to E5. They make you pay the security tax to see the data. Like they'll say, hey, sometimes the alerts come across risk state hidden. Not gonna tell you why because you didn't pay. I know why, but I'm not gonna tell you, and I hate that. So we're doing it to supplement because we're going to do it for less money than what it's going to cost to get your entire company up to all of E5 for all the other things you don't want to buy and don't want to own and don't want to maintain. Number one. Number two, we feel like we do a better job at it because we're a little more nimble and a little more close to the problem. So we're going to take those alerts and just work it. So you're not obligated. You don't have to have bare minimum. There's no like you must be this tall to ride. You just bring an M365 instance, bring a Google Workspace instance, find whatever EDR, like at least some EDR. That's the bare minimum. I think most companies, even if you're like 10 users, are probably going to have that in today's day and age.
So good. I've taken so much from this. I think we could talk for 3 more hours. Maybe we do need to do another
Yeah, let's
one
do
of
it.
these. We schedule them for 30 minutes. Wait, thank you so much. Thanks for the partnership. I have a few takeaways. First of all, I need to read your blog, learn what AQL means, those type of things. And the second takeaway is you really have something that I believe can help our customers be more secure, and that they need to listen, look at it, and really go to learn more.
Yeah.
Wirespeed.co.
.co. Yeah, because the guy sitting on .com wants like $1 million for it. So help us, and
Oh,
maybe one day we'll buy it.
yeah, we'd love to help. Any last things you would want someone to know, short and sweet, that you would want any of our executives and or IT managers to know before we sign
Uh,
off?
Onboarding is painless. We onboard customers in like 15 minutes all the time. Good luck doing that the old way. We hold your hand through there, and we have a sub 2 minute response time for the in-app chat. So if you had a question, you can go launch the in-app chat during the like normal North American hours. It's like a minute some change that we normally respond to you. So it's pretty cool. We really prioritize being able to do that, and I don't know, we love seeing what we have customers from all different walks, and it's neat to be able to see what they do too, like learn a little bit about their companies too.
I do have one more question. Sorry. What is your target market? I mean, 1 to 204,000, or did you say
So
24,000? I lost track of the
This
number. Like,
this is a longer question. You just length this. So when we started, we said our ideal customer profile was a mid-market company. Why do we say that? Because when you're a brand new startup and you go into enterprise, they tend to be very picky, and they've got that guy that wants to play stump the chump and all this stuff. You've got to be really on your A game. Like, we'll get there. Not ready for that yet. Also, we love SMB, but it's really hard to get to find them all. Customer acquisition cost is high. So like partners like you that already have the relationships, that sort of thing. Yeah, bring them to us, but we're not going to proactively go after them. But the fundamentals are the same. But we love mid market because they've got a lot of the same problems the enterprise do. Have way less budget, way less attention to or time to spend on it, and we like to just say we're really purpose built for small teams. What's fun about that is every team thinks they're a small team. Every team. If you're an SMB with like one guy, you're obviously a small team. If you're a mid-market company and you're fortunate enough to have one security guy, well, guess what? You think you're a small security team. If you're an enterprise and you've got 10,000 users and you've got 10 people doing security, you feel like you've got a small team. And I can tell you, Walmart, when they had, I think, 1,000 people in InfoSec, so go stop and think about that for a minute. Um, they probably still feel like they're big, but they still feel resource strapped. Everybody's resource strapped. No one has as much as they want. So yeah, that's kind of our target there.
purpose built for small teams, and everybody perceives them
Everybody's a
having
small
a
team.
small team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's genius. Tim, thank you so much. Josh, any last things you want
No,
to close us out with?
thanks, Tim. It was great to meet you, and awesome to hear about your technology. Sounds like you guys are in your new company. Sounds like you're on track to achieve your goals. So we want to help you do that, and we appreciate you joining us today.